and gentlemen, welcome back to the Shirtless Plantain Show, the Arsenal edition. This is your host, Dean, and today I am here with Mitch. What's going on, Mitch? How are you?
I woke up at 5:30 this morning and I get to record a podcast about it and that's fun, but I didn't enjoy the 2 hours after that.
Yeah, it was a bit early to be up for whatever that was. We don't want to get too whiny about this particular game because it's a preseason game, okay? It's really a fitness exercise and for tactical experimentation. But let's get into it and see what insights we got out of the game. It happened in Hong Kong, and this just so happened to be the first ever North London derby outside of North London. I guess that's a good thing. What's your stance on it? Personally, I feel as if it. I understand people in certain parts of the world not getting certain experiences, blah 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 blah. It's cool, whatever. But I think certain experiences shouldn't be cheapened. A local derby feels like something that should always happen where should happen, in either their stadium or the Emirates. That's it. That's my opinion on it. I know that's a little conservative, but where do you stand on the matter?
I would go one step further. Of this was not the first time that the North London Derby's been played in preseason, and I would love for it to be the last. I would love for us to never play Tottenham again, home or abroad, in a game that does not matter. Do not want to do that. I think, like you said, it cheapens it. I think El Clasico used to be an event, and then they started playing like 7 El Clasicos a season, and it's like, well, it's not as interesting anymore. And yeah, a rivalry game in a game where everyone is just trying to get up to fitness is just not a good idea. In the same way that I was talking about, or during the Newcastle game, of like, why are we playing against a team that fouls us more than any other team in the league? This isn't productive. This isn't helpful. It's just an avenue to get hurt. And ask Leandro Trossard how that felt.
Yeah, that could have happened at any point. That could have happened in training, but we'll get to that in a bit. But there's also the aspect of I feel like preseason was always the opportunity to play fixtures that we almost would never see when the real
Yeah.
games start. Like I think I can accept that AC Milan versus Arsenal is not the most unique fixture anymore because that can happen in the Champions League or some other competition in Europe. But it'd be cool to see Arsenal versus Celtic or Arsenal versus Ajax or, like these are professional footballers. They'll provide a good challenge. I don't know that promoters make more money by putting these specific Premier League matchups together abroad. It just doesn't strike me as I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but I was looking at the makeup of the stadium and it looked like mostly Arsenal. Like, there was a Spurs corner, but the rest
Yeah.
was Arsenal, it looked like to me. So,
I mean, you're able to create this kind of like, it was a good atmosphere. People showed up for this game, which was awesome. And like they clearly had like a Spurs section and an Arsenal section, so you had the coordination. It looked pretty, looked nice. All the Spurs fans waving their little white flags in surrender. And it all looked fun and good, but it just does not make sense logistically to do this during preseason. Granted, this is not a sport that operates in the logistics. The Club World Cup is Exhibit A of that. This is a sport that operates on the bottom line first and foremost, and these kinds of games, as we saw, are going to bring a crowd, and will bring revenue. So unfortunately, I don't think this is the last one that we're going to see, as much as I would like it to be.
I at this point, I think Arsenal is of a stature that it's teams like Newcastle and Tottenham that actually benefit more from this than Arsenal. Like if Arsenal went there to play a local team, they'd still sell that stadium out.
Yep.
I mean, they sold that stadium out 13 years ago when Arteta was playing, I think. I remember that, because I've lived a long time. But let's talk about the lineup because that's where we like to start. It was Raya, White, Saliba, Kivior, Miles Lewis-Skelly, Norgard, Rice, Odegaard, Saka, Havertz, and Martinelli. Any surprises in that for you, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the first 11 of available players since Gabriel's hurt, minus Zubimendi. This is pretty much the 11 that's going to start at Old Trafford, other than Zubimendi's probably at the 6, and Gabriel if he's healthy. So, not a super surprising lineup, but I think Norgard was a little bit interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a bit. But I thought the game the Arsenal started very quickly in this game. The first
Hmm.
6 minutes were just a blitz, and it reminded me a bit of PSG away, where the team was playing well. They didn't create as many chances. Odegaard had a nice shot to start the game. There was a set piece where he kind of scuffed it, and Saliba headed the ball wide, just wide, and it looked like okay, it's going to be an attack defense exercise. Then I want to say Tottenham got in the game, but really, I feel like they just had a moment. They had a corner kick where Van de Ven was fouling Raya the entire time, and the ref didn't call it. And we'll talk about him in a second here, that being the ref. And once that happened, the game just kind of fell into this dull stalemate for me, where if the grass felt like it was a little too dry or too long. The ref was being very finicky and not finicky simultaneously. He just wasn't doing a great job by my perspective. And it's weird to complain about refereeing during a preseason game, but there's a reason why local refs don't ref. And I mean, we complain about the PGMOL all the time, but there are levels to the refereeing shit as well. And I think today was a good illustration of that. A local ref that, yes, this is a great opportunity for them, but I don't really think he did a good job. Am I over-indexing this, Mitch?
No, it's unfortunate that we have to talk about refs during a fucking preseason game, but we absolutely do. It was a big story of the match because it was my least favorite thing in refereeing. Inconsistent. There would be two identical fouls and one of them would be called, and that's just really frustrating. It creates like a bad watching experience, and it creates a bad experience when you're rooting for a team, especially when, like, as a fan, you're always going to be watching with rose-colored glasses. You're always going to be like, oh, the ref was unfair to us, and they weren't unfair to the other team. Especially when it's like small nicks and knacks across the field, as opposed to like one big play that changes a game. But it was very frustrating to be watching this game and feel like, oh, we won the ball back. No, it was called dead. Or the ball was taken from us. Surely that's a foul. No, it wasn't a foul. Okay, I guess we're gonna keep going. And so that kind of watching experience is not very fun. And especially just like any soccer game that's stop-start is a not enjoyable watch, where it's like both teams are trying to find rhythm and neither can, because of inconsistent refereeing, or one team is going harder on challenges than the other. So be it on whatever it is, but it was a frustrating watch, and the ref did not help that.
Very well said. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a fitness exercise, so I was mostly focused on that. But it was hard not to notice that okay, this refereeing is a little funky. That said, the first moment the first sort of really obvious moment where the refereeing was a little odd, I mentioned a little earlier, that was essentially Van de Ven fouling Raya the entire time. But that sort of lent itself to a larger trend throughout the game. I felt like we seemed uncharacteristically shaky defending set pieces in this game. Is that something you're concerned about?
Um, no, I think it's hard to draw a conclusion like that from something like preseason, like that we're going to be bad on set pieces now when it's been such a strength for us. I do think that Tottenham were so shit at them that there's a good chance that Thomas Frank came in and said, "Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Thomas. Nice to meet you all. We're going to do 3 weeks of set pieces. We are not doing anything other than set pieces for 3 weeks, because you guys fucking suck at them. Vicario, get your little arms up there and claim a cross." And so there's a chance that it's something that Tottenham have put a lot of focus on because it's something they were particularly bad at. And I think there was, there's things like where some things go back to refereeing where the pushing around a goalkeeper it has been something that's been a huge focus on Arsenal. Like Ben White has been under the microscope the last few years for sorry, my kitten is trying to knock over my water bottle. I'm trying to fight him while I'm trying to make a point. This is not good podcasting. I'm sorry, people.
It's a bit like Van de Ven versus Raya.
Exactly. Yes. And that is something that you are not allowed to do in the Premier League. It is something that was totally allowed to be happening today. And so like that can kind of throw you off your rhythm when all of a sudden what you're used to happening on a set piece gets refereed completely differently.
Yeah, I won't take any big insights from the fact that the set pieces looked a little funky, but I'd really rather it didn't happen that way. No matter what the context is, I expect the team as solid as Arsenal to be solid on set pieces because some of those clear shaves could have changed the result and made this game a little more embarrassing and had Arsenal fans on the internet being even more embarrassing than they were today. Because the amount of reactions to this game that were outsized that I saw on the various websites was it's a little disturbing, but I'm used to it by now because that's just what Arsenal fans do.
Yeah.
That said, did you get the sense that it wasn't just about the refereeing or the dry pitch, and it was more that the players seemed to be, because right now it's preseason, they're getting loaded up. They're getting these minutes into their legs to prepare for the actual games. And it felt like, we were in the group chat together talking about the game at 5:30 a.m. or whenever it was. And we made the observation in the chat that it looked like everyone had heavy legs. After that first 5-6 minutes, it just felt like everyone slowed down. Like there was no one that stood out as being good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that preseason for a professional soccer player is particularly restful. You're traveling to completely different countries. You're playing 3 games in 8 days. And in between those games, I can't imagine that there's that much of just chilling. It's probably a lot of training, and then you're doing like promotional appearances and stuff like that. It's probably just in general a tiring experience. We're at the end of the trip now of this is the 3rd game that we're playing in 8 days. We've had to travel to a different country from Singapore for this game. Like I wouldn't blame them if all of the players were kind of just feeling a little lethargic for this game. Also, I wonder how you mentally prepare as a soccer player when you're supposed to be it's this grand rivalry of the North London Derby, but you're playing it and it doesn't matter. How do you mentally prepare for that? Like, how do you you don't your preparation for preseason isn't the same that it is for a regular game, because you don't see guys giving like 110% like they would in a regular game. But how do you prepare for like a rivalry match that doesn't matter? That's just, I feel like a weird thing in my brain, let alone a player's brain.
Yeah, I want to say that even the players, even after the game, the players can't even particularly answer that right now because it's just such a unique occurrence and one that I imagine a lot of them think I'd really rather not do that again. But like us, they accept that this is the future.
Yep.
And the future is now, and it kind of sucks. That said, let's talk a little bit about Spurs. I know we don't really do that here. We don't like to do that, but we did play against them, and they're the local rival. You mentioned Thomas Frank potentially emphasizing set pieces. I think as an old Brentford coach, he almost certainly has done that. But what did you like about what you saw today? I think it's pretty obvious that defensively they were much better. I mean, compared to what Ange was doing with them last season, despite his haram ball to win them that fake European trophy they're flexing right now. But it just looked like, I mean, at a minimum, defensively they're more solid. It looked like people knew where to stand, and that's a
Yes.
good start for a team to be better at defense. What else did you see that you liked about them?
Thomas Frank is a very good coach. I think this is a good hire by them. He is an upgrade over Ainge. And I think the defensive stability is a big, big thing. I've said it before on this podcast. I'll say it again. That 9-man game against Chelsea where they kept playing a high line is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen a manager do, and he got fucking praised for it, and that's just baffling to me. So the fact that they treated this like a real game of, hey, we scored, we went up 1-0, and we're gonna now go into a deep block. And it was an organized deep block. It was a tough one to break down. It's one that we know as Arsenal fans that we will be seeing many times throughout the Premier League season. So if anything, that's good practice for us. We need to be able to break that thing down. Ultimately, we weren't able to, but it's good to be able to see those kinds of things early. And if you're a Tottenham fan, it may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but it's good that you have a coach that's being pragmatic, because your old guy definitely fucking wasn't. And then another highlight that I saw from Spurs that I think their fans can definitely take as encouragement is I really like their wide play. I thought a lot of their wider players were really good. Spence stood out to me as a player that popped on screen. I think Kudus was a very good addition for them. I don't know if this is Premier League title contending or even the top 4 contending group when it comes to their wingers, but I like Ben White had a rough first half. And it's not often where you see a rough first half from Ben White. So you have to give credit where credit's due in that regard. I thought they were pretty strong in that area. I'm still not super convinced by their midfield. The fact that they're likely signing João Paulinho will likely help. He's a very, very good player. I think I can go on a limb and say that I think that they will finish higher than they did last season. It's a low fucking bar. But I don't think that they're like all of a sudden top 4 contenders or something like that.
Yeah, I don't see it for them either. I think ultimately, at present, I don't think they have enough goals in the team. I did like the White play as well. You know, like you mentioned, Kudus and Wilson Odegaard on the other side were quite good. Gave Ben White some troubles, but Urian Timber would shut that shit down pretty quickly if it came to it. If this was a serious game, we'd move some things around and that'd be shut down pretty quickly. But I think Spurs fans, as long as they're not obsessed with this whole we play a certain style of football thing that they do sometimes, if they accept that Thomas Frank is going to make them very difficult to beat first and foremost, then I think they'll have a good season. They'll enjoy watching their team. Now will it be peak Gareth Bale and Harry Kane and Jurgen Klinsmann type Spurs teams? I don't think Thomas Frank is going to coach that kind of team. And I don't think he has the personnel to really coach that kind of team, despite the presence of guys like James Madison and whoever the fuck else they have. But yeah, I'd be optimistic if I watch this as a Spurs fan. That said, let's get back to the team that actually matters. What did you make of Arsenal's play? Like, did you notice anything new in the way we approached the game? I thought this was one of my criticisms from our play last season, and maybe it's legit given the conditions. You know, it's hot, the pitch is a little dry, the ball is slow, passes are being misplaced. But I felt like there was a little too much long ball going on there. And to make matters worse, in addition to the long ball, to Saka or Kai, I felt like the offside discipline wasn't good either. Because if you know that part of our strategy is to kick it long to you guys when they push up, then you got to stay on line. And I felt we were called offsides a few too many times for my liking.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that if this was a normal game or even a game that took place like 2 days later, maybe this is a setup where Gyökeres is the one that's starting this game because we're trying to hit it long as part of our tactics at a 0-0 game state. And then Kai comes in when we are kind of chasing the game, trying to break down the low block. Yeah, I agree. I wasn't a huge fan of the offsides there. There was a couple where I think Saka was on sides and it was a little close, but I do like the idea of trying to find an outlet. We're still very, very right side heavy, and it was throughout the entire game with all personnel. We were attacking majority of the way through the right side, it's a continued pattern for like 4 years now of like we are, and Saka's our best player. We're going to where our best player is. I completely get it, but I think we need to have a little bit more variety, even when a 15-year-old is on and they're double covering him, And I'm sorry, Dean, I'm doing the thing that I'm skipping ahead again.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, you already mentioned Ben White being a little sloppy. Odegaard hit the post at one point after some broken play in midfield. Then let's get to the goal. Which really should have doubled as a conversation about the refereeing, but fuck it, we can do it again. Raya plays a ball into midfield to Miles, which is interesting because you think naturally the person that should be getting that pass is probably the 6, but I think we've already sort of decided that that's not really the role we want Norgard to play when he's playing as the 6. We're gonna kind of shunt him out wide a little bit. But in any event, Raya plays the ball to MLS. He turns, starts to run, clearly gets clipped by Richarlison. Ref doesn't call it. Ball rolls over to Pop Matisar. He plays a nice lob over Raya, 1-0 to Spurs. There's no VAR here. If this happens to be a game in the Premier League, I'm pretty confident. I wouldn't say 100% confident, but I'd say like 95 because it's still the PGMO. But I'm pretty confident that goal gets disallowed for the foul in the build up to the goal. That said, it's still a goal that Arsenal conceded, so blame must be assigned. How are you divvying up the blame here?
Interesting. I don't think I put it on Miles. I think Miles has like enough of a good track record of carrying the ball to like if he's not getting fouled, he's not going to get rid of it. There was a play later in the game where he does a similar thing. He gets the ball like this, turns and dribbles through 4 guys and then breaks a line. And that's why he's such a dynamic player. That's why we love Miles Lewis Skelly. So I think there's maybe a little bit of a communication breakdown by the team. I think that's a thing where you're trying to 3 guys are swarming around Miles Lewis Skelly, and you're like, hey, man on, someone's coming in behind you. That's something we're not hearing on a broadcast. We're not seeing like how things are being communicated or if his teammates are talking to him and something like that. And there's probably a little bit on Raya of maybe that wasn't the pass, maybe that wasn't the location with where Spurs were pressing, how they were pressing. But ultimately, I agree. I think it was on the referee.
Yeah, I think it was very clear because even before Sarr got the ball, I was I'd actually looked away because I was expecting to hear a whistle. So I kind of dropped my focus on the game for a second because I was like, oh, that's a foul. And I looked away.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I know, someone was celebrating a goal, and I'm like, wait, what? But that's okay. It was in line with what we were seeing throughout the game. So, it's nothing out of the ordinary. That said, I do think you're right to kind of call Raya out on that. On one hand, I think to myself, a lot of our complaints as Arsenal fans is that we don't like the amount of central progression we've seen in recent months, and some of that is personnel, some of that is tactics. And when players take the risk to progress the ball through the middle of the pitch, through other teams' midfields, I don't think it's fair to criticize them for making that attempt when it doesn't work out, because sometimes it's not going to work out. That's the reason why they don't do it that often, because it's just dangerous to do it that way. That said, I do think in this particular instance, if we have to blame an Arsenal player, ultimately the blame is on the ref for not calling a clear foul. But if we have to blame an Arsenal player, I'll blame Raya for giving it to a player that was in traffic. But then again, he's giving it to Miles Lewis Skelly, a guy that has shown over time that he's very comfortable in traffic. But good finish by Sarr, though. Credit for that, because a lot of players have that opportunity and they go for it and they mess it up more often than not. So very nice finish by him. The half ended with a series of Arsenal corners. I think the response to the goal was decent, not great. It was still a very dull, kind of sloppy game, but as we got towards the end of the half, the urgency kind of pepped up a bit, and I think it was like 3 corners to end the half, and we looked dangerous on each one, but we didn't score any of them. So that takes us to the second half, where I thought, again, we started pretty well. We continued as we ended the first half. But again, I got to say, I didn't really, thinking back on the game, having watched the 90 minutes live and watched highlights afterwards, there were no real standouts among the starting group. Would you agree with that, or do you think anyone was really good? I mean, Saka had his moments, but that's Saka. We take that for granted. Saliba was good as always. But I think otherwise, and even that, I'm not saying they stood out. I'm just saying they were good. They kind of met their general level. But otherwise, it was just kind of dull from everyone.
Yeah, I think I can name more off the top of my head that I was more unhappy with than ones that like popped off.
All right.
I didn't love Kai's performance. And I didn't love Ben White's. I think he was better in the second half. I liked what Odegaard was doing. I think he was moving with a little bit more urgency. I think in preseason, I think he's been moving a little bit quicker than he was last season. So I think he's getting back to fitness and getting back to the Odegaard that we know he can be and that we want him to be. I did like Lewis Skelly outside of the, I guess, technically coughing up the ball that led to the goal. Exactly. But he does everything. He's doing everything that I expect him to do. He's almost in the Saliba Saka category of when he plays, I just expect consistency, and he brings it every time.
Yeah, I think back to Miles real quick. I think just in general, I want to make the point that no player is perfect. Like, even if they're young and they're having to learn something, they're not perfect. Even when they're world beaters, there are flaws in their game. Like, Lionel Messi is not particularly good in the air. That's not a controversial statement, and it's true. And it doesn't make him any less of a GOAT than he is, or the GOAT than he is. And with Miles, I think, just in general, I think for as long as we have him playing in the role he's currently playing in, we're going to have to be okay with him occasionally losing the ball like that, especially when he gets fouled.
Yeah.
When he got the red card against West Ham last season, what was left unsaid was that Kudus fouled him before he pulled Kudus down. But once the referees decide that they want to look at a particular foul, it's easy for them to ignore everything that happens before that. Because I remember in that moment, I was thinking to myself, well, they're just going to write this whole thing off because Kudus put an elbow in his head before Miles had to tackle him. But that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to give some love to the homie, Miles Skelly. That said, I want to say Arsenal pepped up when we had our first set of substitutions in the 6th, 7th minute. Trossard and Zubimendi came on from Martinelli and Norgard. But before we talk about their impact on the game, I want to talk about Martinelli. I feel like he's been a lightning rod this preseason. What have you made of his performances so far? I think I can admit that they haven't been great, but I don't think that he's been uniquely bad or worse. I think this is just long-term frustration because I saw a lot of chatter online about Martinelli needing to go or not being good enough and this, that, and the third. Where are you on Martinelli right now? It's been a long time since he had a consistent run of form that really made us feel like this is a kid Jurgen Klopp was talking about as a world beater. I remember that.
Yeah, for sure. He has not had that run of form in a while. I think there's moments like this where I'm like, I wasn't really seeing much about Martinelli, and it's because I'm not on Twitter, so I'm not seeing the bulk of the conversation. I don't think he was bad. I don't think he is playing at a level where it's like, yeah, man, your starting spot is confirmed, or even like a team comes in with a good offer for you. Like, I'm tempted to like, granted, he was maybe linked to Bayern earlier in the season, and since they're buying Diaz, it's probably not an option. I don't really see Martinelli leaving this window. I'm very okay with Martinelli sticking around. I think something that we've talked about in terms of Arsenal squad building is Martinelli is a player that I think would benefit. He would probably benefit, and the team would probably benefit by someone being brought in to potentially start over him. Now, if Nani Madueke is available today, I think he maybe is more effective in this game state than Martinelli is off the left. Obviously, we've yet to see him actually play for Arsenal. I'm very excited to actually see that. But I think it's all about just what kind of options we can bring to the table in these kinds of roles. And yeah, Martinelli was not great, but I don't really know. I don't understand I didn't see anything from him today that was like, I'm cashing out. I'm selling my stocks. I can't do this anymore.
That's fair. That's sort of how I feel about it. And I think at a bare minimum, and I know this is what people want to hear about an attacker, but at a bare minimum, he's probably the best defender among the attackers.
Yep.
So that alone provides value. He's also the paciest in the right game state when he has space to run into. I think ultimately we're only going to get the best out of him once we make him mostly an off the ball player where he's making runs off kind of like Theo Walcott used to do back in the day, except, he was on a strong foot. But I think Martinelli would be better used like making just tons of runs throughout the game, just tons of runs, especially when Gyökeres is in the game. I would love to, Gyökeres has that left side bias. Martinelli kind of feels like he's not kind of, he's definitely not a touchline winger, so you get him off the touchline, you get Gyökeres into the channels. And I think if the idea is to get him the ball on the run more often, then we can get more value out of him than we've been getting for the past 2 seasons where he's getting the ball to feet and having to beat a man. And it's not, sometimes it works out. Most times it feels like it doesn't. But ultimately, I agree with you. I don't think I've seen anything in this preseason that makes me say, oh, we gotta get rid of him. That said, if we're ranking our options at present at the club, in my mind, I feel like Nani Madueke on the left is actually a better option than Martinelli at the moment. That's just the way it feels. It's Nani, it's Trossard, it's Martinelli at the moment,
I think part of that is like shiny new toy syndrome, but I agree.
But it's without seeing the guy,
Yeah.
If he'd played and somehow embarrassed us, then maybe he'd be down the list. But at the moment, yeah, I'm fucking with the shiny new toy. I'm fucking with it, and I've seen the compilations. I've seen him play on the left for Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
It's, we'll see. We'll see what Arteta does with him. I think he has some really interesting ideas for how he's going to deploy that guy this season. Essentially, in my head, he feels like the long-awaited Rafinha replacement, like a winger that can play on both sides, that has different qualities from the wingers that we currently have. But we'll see how that goes. We can wait on that. Can't wait to see him at the Emirates. That said, once Trossard and Zubimendi came on, I thought the performance improved. Like the technical level just rose. It felt like the passes were connecting a little bit better. I mean, it still wasn't the best version of Arsenal I've ever seen, but almost instantly there was a shot from Zubimendi that got deflected over the bar. Kind Kai Havertz had a really good opportunity to spank one, but he hit it right at Vicario. Odegaard was really soft on a really nice white cutback that probably should have at least forced a proper save out of the goalkeeper. He just kind of didn't lock his ankle on that one. Hopefully that's not that is not a preview of what might be happening during the season, but I think I've seen enough of the good stuff to be like, you know what, that was an aberration. So do you take any sort of meaning from the fact that Zubimendi came on, then all of a sudden the team looked much better?
No, I think Norgard is going to be a very dependable backup. But I think this says more about Zubimendi being very good than Norgard being bad. I know Arsenal fans, especially after a loss, love to run with superlatives of this guy's good and this guy's bad. Neither of them are bad players. Norgard is a very solid Premier League quality player who I would trust to play six in a stretch of games if we needed to. Hopefully, Zubimendi stays healthy and we don't need to rely on him as much, but he is someone that I trust to play there during games. Zubimendi has always been viewed, in my eyes, as someone who's a level raiser, as someone who's going to come in and make us immediately better, as opposed to do a job. Norgard's here to do a job. Zubimendi's here to bring us a title. So I would expect us to look significantly better. It would be a bad look on Zubimendi if we didn't. And he did exactly that. I think he facilitates the play very, very well. He's a very quick passer. He's interestingly playing very high. I'm very excited to see that. And once he kind of gets his place a little bit more, maybe ripping some shots outside of the 18 with playing so high. I'm very, very excited about that player, and I think it's more about him being very good.
Yeah, fair enough. Norgard, again, I think that's the right way to distinguish between these two players. One is here to do a job, and the other one is a level raiser. So you can't really compare them like apples to apples. You know, one is the backup for the other, and it's very clear. That said, Arsenal did improve. I'm going to say about 7 minutes later, we made our next batch of subs. You know, at this point, the game is now a mess because everyone has made a bunch of subs. Spurs have made a bunch of subs. We brought on Mosquera for his debut, Marino, Dauman, Zinchenko, and to very loud applause from the crowd, Victor Gyökeres for his Arsenal debut. We'll have more opportunities to talk about all these guys in detail throughout a very long season ahead of us. But did any one of these, outside of Dauman, because he's going to have a section in a second, but did any one of these other guys sort of stand out in this deep block facing version of Arsenal that we had to watch today at 5 a.m. in the morning? I can't believe Spurs would do that. Nasty motherfuckers.
One thing before I talk about this, there was one Norgard moment before we move on from him where he chewed out the ref and it was awesome. And like, that was great. It wasn't a soccer moment, but he chewed out the ref and that was really fun. In regards to these guys that came on, I want to say Mosquera stood out a little bit just because he's the player I've watched the least. He's like the signing I was least excited about, not because I'm not like excited for him, but just because like I don't know much about him. He's a young player. From what I've seen, he's kind of more an off the ball defender, which makes me like a little concerned when regards to like fit long term in the Arsenal team. But he looked very confident on the ball. I think it helps when you're standing next to someone like William Saliba. And he wasn't doing anything crazy with the ball, but he was at least like competent with the ball, which is what I expect out of any Premier League center back, you know? So there was no cause for alarm with Mosquera, but also he didn't have any moments where he needed to be like doing any one-on-one defending or playing an incisive pass. But he was the one I saw the most, so he's the one I'm bringing up. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres came on with the loudest applause. Maybe not his greatest performance, but he played 20 minutes. He just got back into training with the guys. He's still getting chemistry with everyone. I'm by no means ringing any alarms about Victor Gyökeres. One thing that I'm going to be consistently keeping an eye on with him, though, is his aerial ability. Because you mentioned the long ball earlier in the game. I think it's something that Kai is very good at, is like winning those because he's fucking huge. And us being able to win second balls off of a long kick. it's not in his strengths. Like, he's scored 0 headed goals, and granted, winning aerial duels, it doesn't mean headed goals, but I think it's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on with him. But it's part of the thing that I'm excited about, which is that he's a completely different profile from Kai. He offers something completely different. I don't think we got to see him run in behind because Spurs were playing so deep. By no means cause for alarm. I'm excited to actually see him in a full kind of fledged setup.
Yeah, I just want to adjust expectations early. I'm not part of the Victor Gyökeres defense fund at the moment, but I do want to make the point that I don't think it's fair to judge a player by his clearest weakness. Like, why would you play the ball long to him if you already know he's not good in the air? Like, I think
100%.
if Arsenal ends up doing that on a regular basis, that is a failure of coaching and
Yeah,
tactics, not the player himself. Like
100%.
we need to play him the channel balls that we know he's good at working with, not play him those long balls. Like, if we're playing long balls while he's on the pitch, it's because they need to be going to Saka or because he's playing alongside Kai Havertz, who happens to be good at that. But we shouldn't be. I mean, like, I'm not saying he has a pass to be completely useless at that part of the game,
Hmm.
but that's not how I'm judging him. But that
Yeah,
said, every player can improve, and it's something he should be working on for sure. And if
100%.
at some point he improves that part of his game enough for us to actually use him in that manner, great. But if he never gets there, I'm not mad at him for that because
Um,
I really do not expect much from him in that regard. I don't think.
yeah. Another note on these subs. Zinchenko played like this was a Premier League game and we were down 1-0. I appreciated the hustle, I
Yes,
guess.
yes.
And hopefully Trossard's injury isn't serious, so we can still sell him to Dortmund.
Did it look serious to you,
Mm,
or do you think there's
anytime a
yeah,
player, anytime a player after he comes on like 10 minutes ago goes off with an injury, that's a little concerning. Um, but I didn't see the injury enough to know if it was like
yeah.
that serious. Was I have a question because I wake up literally at 5:30 for these games. Like, I roll out of bed and turn it on my phone. So I don't like have like the hour of build up before the game of like looking at the lineups. Was Ethan Wanyeri like hurt and not in the team, or was he just not playing for some reason?
No, I think this was just a game that was slated for Odegaard. Because he's gonna be the starter. We know that.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
as good as Ethan has been in preseason, we know that Odegaard is probably gonna start the season unless something disastrous happens. And knock on wood, that doesn't happen. I do think he was probably slated to get minutes in this game, but Arteta actually wanted to win this game, and he felt like the best way to do that was to keep his captain on. Plus, he could have used the minutes because he's only really played he's been the sub in the first two preseason games.
That's
Odegaard
true.
has been.
Yeah.
So he was due to get the bulk of the minutes at some point. I was just a little surprised that he got all of the minutes in that role. That said, with Trossard, I want to say this is just an old dude. He's 30 years old that probably has knows his body a lot better than some of the younger guys. And the minute he felt something, was like, I might be on for a transfer to go make some more money somewhere else. I'm not fucking this up. So he called out. I'm thinking it's one of those as opposed to, oh my God, something terrible has happened. So
I hope so.
hopefully that's the case. I don't think Ethan should be worried about getting minutes though. It was just a unique circumstance, and I'm sure we'll see him against Villarreal and Athletic Bilbao in a couple weeks, days, whatever it is at the
Next
Emirates
week.
Cup. Next week, you say? Yes, correct. Yeah, towards the end, the last bit of chance creation I remember involves Mendy snatching at a pair of shots. I think Gyökeres set him up for one of them. The other one was just a loose ball that he swung at. Neither one made a dent. Uh, Credit to Spurs for defending well for the most part. Arsenal had 16 shots to my knowledge, but only one was on target throughout the game. That's impressive. Spurs only had 6 shots, so despite the fact that Arsenal lost this game, the defending is still generally solid, despite the funky set piece stuff that we saw. Um, I don't want to do it, but we have to do it because the kid just looks amazing every time he comes on the field. Max Dowman getting double and triple teamed at age 15 against Premier League opposition in preseason. What role do you think this kid might have in the squad this season? Because I think you have to respect talent.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to use him. Um, I feel like Nani's going to be playing a lot on the left.
Yeah, that could be a very interesting one. Um, I we're close to a log jam here. Um, it's it's crazy that like some of the brightest talents that Hale End has produced are all kind of playing in the same little area,
Right.
between Wanyeri, Saka, and Dowman. Um, the good news is he's 15. We do not have to play him. He can look really bright in preseason, but let's be real, we could realistically not see him even make a Premier League squad the entire season, and it would potentially be the right choice because he's a child. Like, I don't think he could legally. I think he has to like change in a different dressing room, right now, like legally. So it's not
Well,
out of the question that
not
he
because
doesn't have a.
Not because Arteta is trying to show him who's boss, like Jamie Carragher said last season. Fucking idiot.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens because he's clearly got the talent. And he's clearly got the confidence. He's a good fucking soccer player, and he will be knocking on the door of the first team maybe this season, maybe next season. I'm willing to be patient. I think hopefully the team is. I think if we're in a position where we
he
like,
is
yeah,
willing to be
that's big
patient.
as well. That's very, very big.
Yeah.
I don't know what like the situation with his contract is. I'm assuming he's still on like a youth contract and not on a pro one yet because he's a child.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens because he does the talent. Like if Dowman plays in a Premier League game, it's not like who the fuck is this guy? Why are we scraping the bottom of the barrel? It's like this guy's gonna fucking do something, even though he is 15.
It's insane. I think ultimately, I sort of said this maybe 2 pods ago when I was being a little hyperbolic, but now I'm not being hyperbolic when I say, if anything, I feel like his emergence really kind of puts a ticking clock on Odegaard's continued presence at the club. I think there's just too much talent in that area of the field for the manager to keep ignoring it if Odegaard doesn't level himself back up to where we know he can get, So I'm hoping for everybody's sake because it would be really awkward if we had to sell our captain because a 15-year-old is really good, and our captain is not getting enough minutes. That'd be weird because we also can't afford to lose that talent because we're not playing him because we're doing the seniority thing, So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, but I think this is a good problem to have for the club. Like it's better to have more good players than less good players, So
Interestingly, you mentioned Nani probably likely playing more on the left.
Right.
I do think that when we see Dowman, I think he'll likely be a winger and not a midfielder in the same way that Wanyeri was often seen as a winger and not a midfielder. And now we're trying to ease him into playing more midfield.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Do you have any grand takeaways from the game that we didn't necessarily get to while talking about it? Because I think we've done well to snatch 42 minutes out of this conversation, given how bland the game was. But have we missed anything?
No.
Okay.
The fact that we got 42 minutes out of this, I think, is really good.
All right.
You're welcome, people. This is for the sickos. You guys, listening to an Arsenal podcast after a loss in fucking preseason. You guys are the real ones. Hell yeah.
Stop, Mitch. This is filler. Let's move on to better things. This is a transfer that we're all kind of obsessing about. 2 questions for you. One, do you think it will happen? And 2, there are reports today that the 60 plus 8 million euro, I can't remember what the denomination is or currency is, for his release clause expires today. Does that worry you perchance, or do you think it's irrelevant?
This is about Eze?
Yes.
I don't think Arsenal were ever going to do that release clause. The reports I was seeing is that we were always going to try to negotiate below it, much like Zubimendi, where it's like, hey, we're willing to pay a little bit more if we can get a better structure on this deal. So I think that's always been the idea. The release clause, I guess, makes us lose a little bit of leverage, I guess. Like we can't just be like, okay, this negotiation's going bad, but we want we're doing it. We're taking the PSR potential ramifications next summer, and we're gonna get Eze in the team. I don't really see us doing that. That seems a little too brash. I think especially when I think like this is gonna be controversial. Gabby would get mad at me if she was on this podcast, but if we did not make another signing, I'd be okay with that. Like this is a good enough team to go in there and win the Premier League, win the Champions League. But if we got Eze, it'd be a cherry on top of like, let's fucking do this. And
Yeah.
I would really want this transfer to happen. I think this transfer would be huge for Arsenal. I think it relies on outgoings. I think both Reece Nelson and Trossard need to be sold in order for this to be a thing, which is why we haven't seen any concrete movement. I don't even think Arsenal and Crystal Palace have had a conversation about it yet. I think there's personal terms agreed. We know Eze's interested. But it's going to have to wait a little bit because we need to make sure that we have some outgoings. We can't be stuck with guys like Trossard and Reece Nelson on our team after we buy Eze. Too many mouths to feed. That's just going to be problematic. Once we get guys like Sambi, Fabio Vieira, Trossard, Reece sold, and we have a little bit of income after the money we've spent, we can afford to potentially do one more deal, and that is likely Eze. But I think it's going to be one that's we're going to have to be patient for. And I will tell you right now, even if Eze does become an Arsenal player, he will not be at Old Trafford at week 1.
Whew. Well, I can't find a lot to disagree with there. That was very well said, Mitch. That said, I've come around to the line of thinking that we kind of have to do this deal. Like, I think you can't express any sort of interest in blue balls the fan base after this. Like, I think people are. It's kind of like the treat that we want, like especially with Madueke in the squad already. I think people have kind of calmed down on that. But ultimately, the argument that, well, why did we do that when we could have done this other thing? People are gonna open that right back up if we get through the window and we don't bring Eze in.
Or
That
like
said,
one bad Madueke performance, it's like, well, we could have had Eze. What the fuck are we doing?
Which is crazy because Eze can definitely have bad performances too, but people would not remember that in that moment. But I really hope we get him. I think it'd be great for the vibes, and I rarely use that word myself, but it would be great for the vibes. And I just think it would help quite a bit because he's creative in ways that we still, to my belief, kind of lack in the team. I think the closest thing we have to that is Odegaard. And even so, it's a very small difference, but it's a difference nonetheless. It's a different kind of creativity, like the creativity that comes from being able to run through motherfuckers. That is not to be taken for granted, and we could definitely use that. Like if he was on the pitch today in Hong Kong, I think Arsenal probably have a better chance of scoring a goal today against a deep block. So I would definitely welcome him to the club, and I really hope we do it. But if it doesn't happen, I'm not throwing my toys out the pram. Honestly, I cannot afford to do that. Like, have you seen these fucking tariffs, people? Anyway, Mitch, thanks for hanging out with me, man. I cannot believe we did 46 minutes on this death game. You know what? Tell the people.
Peace.
Peace. Hey, folks, this is Dean from the Shirtless Plantain Show. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and follow us on all our socials. You can see them right beneath our recordings in every video. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.